You're listening to HowStreet.com radio, available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. Welcome to HowStreet.com radio, the online source for market opinions. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is David Smith, Senior Analyst for the Morgan Report, which you can find online at silver-investor.com. Welcome to the New Year's edition of the show, David.
Yeah, Jim, looking forward to 2015, which is going to be here as we speak practically.
Taking a look at 2014, what worked this year and what didn't?
Well, I suppose a lot of people would say that a lot didn't work, but the reality is that more than a few glimmerings here, you know, this is going on for almost 4 years of a cyclical bear market in the metals, and a lot of people would say a secular one, but I don't believe that. I think the big trend is still intact, and some of the major trend lines have held, and we've seen attempts to establish new lows here over the last few weeks, which failed after the big Monday turnaround we had a couple of weeks ago with spike lows. The better mining stocks are doing well. They're holding up well within a kind of a box trend sideways, and a lot of other companies have really stopped declining. And today, as you and I are talking, gold and silver are quite strong. We'll see how that plays out. But as I mentioned, I think when we were talking last time or the time before last, Bob Moriarty of 321gold.com did a study where he looked at the last, I think, 12 or 14 years of situations where if you had bought a mining stock or the metals in late December, that within 90 days, you know, if, you would have a profit 100% of the time. So we'll see if this will be something that breaks the rule, but certainly the rule looks like it's pretty strong in that buying a quality miner anywhere in here now gives you a very good chance of a profit over the next 3 months.
And people are saying that's exactly what's happening. We saw a lot of mergers and acquisitions over the past year, but they say this trend is going to continue into the new year. And if you thought you saw some fire sale prices now, just wait a few months.
That's right, and I think you're going to see a lot more of that. The emphasis will be on quality, where one of the big miners feels that there's a project that has a really good risk-reward to it, and of course, all these companies are trading at a fraction of where they did even a year or two ago, and so they'll either swoop in and do a hostile takeover or buy enough shares to hold 19% or so they can control the property or have a big say in how it's done, this type of thing. And that will further shift the emphasis away from non-performers who have no future toward those who have some place to go on the upside.
Yes, we have a great case, too, of mistiming by a government. Barrick is dropping their Zambia copper operation because the country decided at the spur of the moment to increase the royalties from 6% to 20%. Great move by the country, huh?
Yeah, you have to wonder. Here we have prices under pressure across the commodity complex, and then, a bureaucracy does something like that. And, a few months ago was Indonesia wanting to have more refining going on in country before the host companies could send their product out to be refined. And so you can only get so much blood out of a turnip, and at some point the companies say, hey, we've had enough, we give up, goodbye, we're going to close things down. And the people that really get hurt on that are the locals, because this is something that we don't think about too much. And I've seen this firsthand right up as of a couple weeks ago when I was in Bolivia. Some of the best paying jobs, especially away from the big cities, are in these mining camps where people not only can make good money, but when that thing closes down, they make no money. And I visited the group of people who've been out of work for 10 years, Jim, because this particular mine closed down. So they very much appreciate, and most of these foreign companies, probably many, if not most of which, are Canada-based, treat their employees quite fairly and quite well. Because they realize that they have a responsibility in the host country to the population there, and they do their best to be good stewards of whatever project they're working on.
I was going to say, Canadian companies known to be environmental stewards, not people who like to go out and rape the country.
That's true, and I would say, I've run into a couple companies that, you kind of question their ethics, but boy, overwhelmingly, the ones that I've seen, they really try to do a good job in a very complex, difficult and sometimes dangerous environment.
We'll have more with David Smith right after this.
More and more people are looking to the internet for intelligent, riveting, and thought-provoking interviews. To advertise on the Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com, call 604-699-8600, 604-699-8600.
Welcome back. We're speaking with David Smith, Senior Analyst for the Morgan Report. March 31st, very important date to remember in the Canadian mining business. In BC, you have to file your annual report by then, but that may not happen for some companies because if you owe money to your accountant, you're not allowed to file an annual report. David, a rule that may hurt companies now, especially in tight times.
That's interesting, Jim, and I think you're right on the money with that. In fact, from what I've heard, there could be several hundred companies that are actually in that situation where they have little or no money, and that'll be crunch time for them, and some of them will be delisted. Certainly, the old story, when the tide goes out, you see who's wearing a bathing suit, and so with the tide being out in terms of financing capability and investor sentiment and this sort of thing, it's going to be easier than ever to see the ones that have a chance versus the ones that just there's no future at all. And Jim, speaking of that, there's actually it's the largest, if not one of the largest, but I think it's the largest conference in the world devoted to resource sector companies. And our listeners in Vancouver, BC, are really lucky, or even anywhere in the Lower Mainland, to be able to access this conference. It's in January coming up, so it'll be the 18th and the 19th. This is Sunday and Monday down at One Canada Place. And David Morgan will be a keynote speaker down there. I'll be down helping out on the floor. And I hope a lot of our listeners can get there because, it'll be this year, I think, maybe one of the most beneficial years of all because it'll be so easy to tell the companies that really have a good shot at a future versus the ones that either aren't there at all or the ones that are just hanging on for dear life. And a lot of good quality speakers and the exhibition floor with a lot of good companies either that are established or up-and-comers. And so taking a notebook and paying attention and listening to the people that really know what's going on in the sector and what may be happening, I think would be a tremendous investment for in time and a little bit of effort for as many of our listeners as possible to show up on one of those 2 days or both of them.
And the changing face of the resource investment sector. In the past year, past mining conferences or precious metal conferences, we're seeing a lot of people in there now asking for money or asking you to be part of marijuanical, maybe that is the word for it, medical marijuana operations.
Yeah, and some of the companies that really couldn't make it in mining have turned to medical marijuana. It's kind of interesting, and I just wonder how much of their share base dropped off on that. But at any rate, it's a changing environment, and this is what bear markets do. They winnow out the losers and the ones that don't have what it takes from the winners. And then when things finally get underway, which maybe today is an indication of that, as strong as these prices are, then you really see who's got the goods, and those prices of those high-quality companies can really establish a turnaround, and that's what we're all looking for. So I think 2015, you'll have to be selective in what you do, but I think the environment there will be more potentially productive for us, those of us that are believers in this sector, than has been the case at least for the last 2 to 3 years.
David, I'm thinking that if you're a small company and you have survived this past year, perhaps you do have the right kind of management to take a look at. It
certainly makes it look good for you, and going up and talking to management, that's what's so neat about a conference like this. You'll see the president, CEO, and oftentimes directors of a particular company standing right in there in the booth, and they're more than happy to entertain your questions. In fact, they should be if it's the kind of company that you'd really like to own.
David, thank you very much for chatting with us. I hope the best for you and your family in the new year.
You bet, Jim, and I wish the same for you and all of our listeners. I think this will be the year that we finally get back on our feet again and start looking at more green on our portfolio than red.
Thanks again, David.
You bet. Take care.
My guest has been David Smith, Senior Analyst for the Morgan Report, which you can find online at silver-investor.com. You're listening to HowStreet.com Radio. You can find us on Twitter at TalkDigitalNet. Our YouTube channel is Talk Digital Network. Comments about the show can be sent to info@HowStreet.com. I'm Jim Goddard. Happy holidays.
Comments made on HowStreet.com Radio are an expression of opinion only and should not be construed in any matter whatsoever as recommendations to buy or sell any financial instrument at any time. Available online at talkdigitalnetwork.com. HowStreet.com Radio is a production of How Street Media Incorporated.